NZXT is refreshing its AIO CPU cooler line, which a lot of you probably already know is the Kraken line, with the Kraken and the Kraken Elite. We have the Kraken Elite currently installed in this H9 PC. Now, each of these are going to come in a 240, 280, and 360 millimeter radiator versions, and these really are very similar to the older Kraken line. I had the Z73 on this PC when I first built it back in January. But there are some nice little updates and tweaks on here, so let's dive in and check them out. Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Toys. Be sure to like, subscribe, and enable notifications with the bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Hey everyone, I'm Jordan with 9 to 5 Toys. Now there are quite a few different Krakens to choose from now. There is the Kraken and the Kraken Elite. They both come in RGB or non-RGB variants, and they both come in at those 3 different sizes, so there are quite a few to choose from. One thing to note here with the RGB versions, which is what we have, we tested both the Kraken RGB and the Kraken Elite RGB, both in the 360 variant. The RGB versions come with an RGB controller as well. So taking a look at the overall design, much like all of NZXT's other peripherals and other components, they're very sleek and stylish. Oftentimes components that are more, centered around gaming can be a little bit too flashy, but what I like about NZXT is they really know how to design things. They look very simple, but that also helps to make it nice and sleek. I mean, that's why I love their cases so much. Like I said, this is the H9. And we do have the white Kraken Elite 360 RGB mounted up here. It does also come in black as well. So really the only difference between the Kraken and the Kraken Elite is the screen here in the middle. While both of them have a screen that can be customized to show different performance metrics like CPU temperature, CPU load, GPU temperature, GPU load, or a combination of 2 of those features, or even on both of these they can display a still image if you'd rather put just an image on there. On the Kraken Elite screen that we have here, it's bigger, it's brighter, it has a higher resolution, it also has a higher frame rate at 60 FPS. And so one new thing that they're doing here is having different animations that can be played on the screen here on the CPU cooler. So there is an audio visualizer, there's some other, performance animations that are based around that. You can even connect it to some different web apps like Spotify. So if you wanted to display whatever is currently playing from your Spotify app, that will actually show up on here on the CPU cooler. So some interesting things there. Obviously, that is purely cosmetic. It's not going to give you any more performance, but for those who want something that looks really stylish and is pretty unique and you can really customize it, that's going to be a great way to go. On the Kraken Elite, you can also see it from wider viewing angles than the non-Elite screen. So it's definitely an upgrade, definitely one that you have to pay for. We'll talk about pricing here in a little bit, but if you're really trying to make your PC a centerpiece and really show it off, this is a great way to do it as long as it's in your budget. And compared to the older Kraken Z, which also had a big screen like this and could display different performance metrics, the new Kraken Elite is a much higher resolution display. It's also a little bit brighter, and it has that faster frame rate at 60 FPS over the 30 FPS of the old Kraken Z. And the last thing I wanted to talk about with design here is the fans up top. Now, these are from NZXT's F series and are part of a new budget-minded core line. Instead of the RGB lights being on the perimeter of the fan, they illuminate from the hub in the middle. So these will be a little bit more affordable than the currently standard F-Series fans by about $5, coming in at $20 for a 120mm RGB core fan. So for those who are looking to save a little bit of money on airflow, these fans will still deliver customizable RGB, but at a more affordable price point. And from what I've heard, they will not be replacing the older fans, but will be available as an alternative. Personally, I prefer the look of the older design, but for saving $5 on every fan, that starts to add up when you are filling out something like the H9 case. So it's nice to have a more affordable option. But with the 360, you get obviously those 3 fans up here up top. They seem to perform just as well as what I had on the Kraken Z73. And also installation is very similar to what it was on the Z73, although there is one key difference, which is a nice feature, is that there is only a single cable that goes into the pump here. On the old Z model, you had 2, so that makes it a little bit simpler. The fans do come uninstalled, which makes it so you can kind of customize how you're going to set those up a little bit easier, but there is, just a little bit of building as you combine all those things together. There is still a breakout cable which connects from the pump to a USB header to all 3 of the fans and also to a SATA plug for power. So you do have to connect all those things together, and the manual does walk through that, although there's a lot of information in the manual when it comes to setup, so it can be a little bit confusing. So it is helpful to watch some videos on how all that comes together. So I went with kind of the stock recommended setup here with the radiator across the top of my case and the tubes coming with the connection here at the bottom of the pump. This is kind of what NZXT recommends, although it can work in other configurations as well. If you want to put this on the front and rotate that display, you can rotate the display within the NZXT Cam app to get that all oriented correctly. So all in all, the installation process I do think is just slightly easier than what it was with the older Kraken Z73, but there still are quite a few steps as you mount the fans, mount the radiator, connect all the cables in the breakout cable, and then get everything up and running. So when it comes to cooling performance, I really didn't see much of a difference between the older Kraken Z73 that I already had compared to the normal Kraken and also the Kraken Elite. All 3 of them performed very similarly when it came to heavy CPU load in Prime 95, also with rendering out a video from Premiere Pro, and then also gaming a little bit in Battlefield 2042. The numbers were nearly identical across the board. Prime 95 is going to be one of the most taxing things that you can put a CPU through. It gets all the cores, running up as high as they can, and so puts a lot of temperature through that CPU. And all 3 of these coolers seem to work very well. It didn't really seem like there was throttling going on, even at those higher temperatures for longer sessions. When it comes to noise, it can get loud under full load. And that was something we noticed with the Main Gear MG1 Shroud PCs that seem to be tuned to be a little bit more quiet. And it could have something to do with this case. I mean, there are lots of fans in here and lots of airflow with all the perforation to let air flow through it, so that might make it a little bit louder. So the big thing to consider here then is pricing. How much do you want to pay for this? Pricing starts all the way down at $140 for the 240mm radiator version. So I'll just give you 2 120 fans. If you just kind of cut it off right here, that's for the non-RGB version. And then it goes all the way up to $300 for the one that you see here. This is the Kraken Elite RGB 360mm version. That being said, the Kraken 360 non-RGB, so the same size radiator, different screen, doesn't have the flashy RGB, that is priced at just $180. And in my testing, had pretty much the exact same performance as the Kraken Elite RGB. So, depending on your budget, if you really want, the flashiest, you can, go up to that $300 price point. But if you want that same performance and you don't necessarily care about the RGB across the top, or if you want to add that later in and replace those fans, and you don't mind the screen on here being a little bit smaller, then that's going to give you the same cooling performance for $120 less. As with all of NZXT's products, it does kind of seem like you're paying maybe a little bit of a premium for the design, but for those who want, something that looks stylish and still performs well, I do think that the Kraken and Kraken Elite are great choices here. Having a screen that displays your temperature obviously isn't necessary, but it is kind of really nice to be able to just glance over and take a quick peek at what your hardware is running at. So it works well. It's very easy to customize everything from NZXT's app. So you just have to decide if you're willing to pay maybe a little bit more just for something that looks a little bit better visually, but maybe not gives any better performance. All right, well, that's gonna do it for this look at the Kraken and Kraken Elite from NZXT. Let us know what you think about them down in the comments below. And if you're looking for some other videos to watch, I will link to our build of this H9 PC as well as our most recent video. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so others can find it easier, and consider subscribing. This is Jordan with 9to5 Toys.